So Joe Burrow and the Bengals have been surging, one of the hottest teams in the league. They move on to 10-4 after this ass whooping of a game that in terms of the second half turnaround, 34-23. But Tom and the boys started off hot like you alluded to earlier in the segment. So I'm kind of just going to pass this along to you and say, well, yes, the Bengals won, but what the hell happened to the Buccaneers in the second half of that game?
The Bucs turned the ball over. I mean, it's honestly that simple. And it was a lot in large part it was based off what Brady did. Brady in the first half was solid. I mean, they were moving the ball down the field. The Bengals could not really defend on third down, which has been a major issue with the Bucs this year. They haven't been able to cash in on third down to extend drives. But throughout the first half, the Bucs were just phenomenal. 17 points in the first half. The Bucs defense only allowed 3 points in the first half. It was a complete reversal off of what we predicted going into this game. And then the second half happened. Kev, the only way that I could describe what happened with the Bucs, this was just an outright catastrophe. I mean, it's one thing to, turn the ball over maybe once or twice, but when Tom turned it over 4 times, you're going to lose the game. And especially when those turnovers were happening on their side of the field. So when the Bengals got the ball back, the Bengals are only working with 25, 30 yards away from getting into the end zone. So, when it came to Tom specifically, when you're spotting the Bengals offense off of a turnover with that limit of a field to work with to score points, there's no way that the Bucs are going to be able to hold up defensively, knowing that they have to go up against Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. Like, good luck trying to stop that when first down is on their 20, 25-yard line and they only have a little bit of yardage to go to get a touchdown. It's not going to work. And that's exactly what happened in the second half. The Bengals took advantage of it. I thought Joe Burrow in the first half was shaky. He had the interception early, couldn't really get any sort of momentum going in the first half. But that second half happened. Their defense made some critical plays to get the ball back to their offense, and Burrow took advantage of it. And I mean, at one point, the Bengals scored 34 unanswered points. It was unbelievable. To go from 17-3 to, I believe it was 34-17 at one point. It's unbelievable. It was almost kind of reminiscent of what the 49ers did to the Bucs last week. I mean, the 49ers were up 35-0 at one point, and then the Bucs got the one garbage time touchdown to avoid it from being a shutout. And it kind of had that very similar feel. So obviously, when it comes to the Bengals are one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. They're sitting at a 10-4 record, and they're a legitimate threat when it comes to the AFC when the playoffs start rolling around in a couple weeks. But let me kick this to the Bucs. The Bucs just continue to falter, and this was a game that I actually thought, based on how the first half played out, they had a legitimate shot to win this game. And Brady did something that I have not seen from him this year. Turn the ball over in the way that he did. It's one thing to have one turnover. And if you have 2 turnovers in a game, you could still find a way to possibly win that game. 2 turnovers in a game is not the end all be all, and you can't recover from that. But 4, you're not going to be able to recover from that. And frankly, one of the things that I've really praised Tom this year is the fact that he hasn't turned the ball over a lot more this season, because it would have made the situation a lot worse with Tampa. It would have compounded their issues even more so. And that's despite the fact how bad they've looked this year. Well, this is one of those games where he himself compounded the issues with the amount of turnovers that he had, and it had a direct impact against them. Tom played like shit in the second half. There's no other way that I could describe it. I don't know what happened from going into the first half where it looks like he's just lighting up the Bengals defense like he's done in the past before, to where he looks like a complete scrub in the second half, because that's exactly what he looked like. And I understand that the Bengals got home in the second half. They were able to get some pass rushes on Tom. Tom fumbled the ball a couple times, and the Bengals were able to pick up the recovery. So when it comes to the Bucs had a very good opportunity to win this game, and they just completely faltered it in the second half. And it really was a tale of 2 halves in this game. And surprisingly, I can't believe I'm actually saying this at this point, despite the fact that the Bucs lost this game and that they have a 6-8 record, they're still the best team in the NFC South because all the other teams in the NFC South are apparently just finding ways to just not wanting to get first place in the NFC South. They've had ample opportunities to hop the Bucs for first place, and they have refused to do that. They just haven't stepped up to the plate. And there's a very good chance that the Bucs are going to get into the playoffs with a sub 500 record. And do I think that they have any chance to be viable in the playoffs looking the way that they have this year? No. I think it'll be a very quick first round exit. And then I think the question will be, is Tom going to come back? And honestly, I don't know at this point. I don't think Tom's going to really put up with the issues that seem to be plaguing Tampa right now. And he himself, I don't think, has made it better with the issues that he's had with turning the ball over lately. But, Cal, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not ruling out the possibility that he retires after this year. He may just hang it up. It's like, all right. It's like, I've had enough of this. And honestly, I think you can make a point of maybe he should have retired last year. You know, had 43 touchdowns, was one of the best players in the NFL last year, and had an opportunity and actually did retire after last season, but decided to come back, and it's not looking like the best decision right now. So overall, despite how bad the Bucs have looked this year, they're still in playoff contention. And I can't believe that I'm saying that with a 6-8 record, but it just really goes to show how bad the NFC South is this year. But to round this out, the Bengals are legit. They're on a roll right now. And the Bucs, they suck. There's no other way to say it.
I I'm
I popped off
laughing
on
because
that. I popped off on that one, bro.
I, I don't have anything really to add. You just kind of chopped him up, and to hear you chop up your boy is just kind of comical for me. Um, when you kind of put it in the words that you did, there's not really much you can say, right? When you talk about second half destructions, when you talk about falling apart, when you talk about two halves of just football that just do not correlate with one another, that was the definition of how the Buccaneers played. And of course, you can say the opposite for the Bengals because they were bad in the beginning and they showed out in the end. And I mean, again, let's just mark here the big thing, and then that's going to be the sacks. Like, Joe Burrow was able to stay upright. He had 4 touchdowns. He had 1 interception. I mean, he had a passer rating of 104. He didn't have to throw much in terms of yards, but he was able to be efficient in the red zone. And that was equivalent to the touchdowns he was able to divide amongst 4 separate players. That was Chase, Boyd, Wilcox, and Higgins, each of them having a touchdown each. They all had contributing yards. I mean, they weren't stellar numbers like over 100 yards or anything like that, but Chase had 60, Boyd 35, Wilcox 34, Higgins with 33, and again, a touchdown for each. So that is efficient football. That's winning football. I will give the Buccaneers credit for one thing and one thing only, and that is the fact that they were able to hold Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine to a total of, what is that? 45 yards between the two of them. Joe had 8 yards rushing, so that combines that total to 53. But with Tampa returning to form to an extent, I used air quotes there for those of you listening on the audio platforms. They were able to stop the run, but Cincinnati was down the majority of this game, and they kind of found a way to turn this around in that second half and just wake up and say, 17 in the third quarter. All right, we don't necessarily need to run the ball if passing is working. And then you go and you score 14 in the fourth, and we handed off a little something here, drain some clock. We don't really need to force anything downfield, but the opposite kind of goes for the Buccaneers, where it was kind of throw, trying to just to keep up and stay alive. And I mean, they had 25 rushes, but I would say that the Bengals did a pretty solid job keeping them under 100 yards rushing as well. So um, Tom looked like piss. I mean, I was gonna say piss poor, but I mean, he kind of looked like shit, like Kyle said. I'm trying to be nice, but I just can't because there's no real combatant argument point you can make to say that Tom Brady had a good game because I mean other than that first half he was a completely different quarterback, something we haven't seen. It almost looked like time was catching up with Tom, the way that he was performing. That or the Bengals were able to really just kind of get to town and really find a way to make him miserable in that pocket. And from what I'm seeing here, the Bengals were able to hit Tom at least 7 times, which is going to probably be 10 times more in terms of pressures and knockdowns. So I'm just kind of looking at this and saying the Bengals woke up in that second half to say, you know what, we cannot afford to lose to this guy. We cannot afford to lose to this team. They're not a good football team. And I think that with that being said, the Bengals kind of claim, at least in my opinion, to be the best team in the AFC, either right alongside the Bills or, in my personal opinion, I'd say even higher than the Bills the way they've been playing lately. So that's neither here nor there. But that's kind of my final points here on that game. But again, kudos to Joseph and moving on to 10-4, man. But that NFC South is just absolute crap. The fact that the Bucs are still in first place is just like, it's not even beyond me. It's just like whatever at this point. It's not like they're going to win a football game in the playoffs.